should we send failed asylum seekers abroad? Let's talk about this. 0207 862 2222. Prime Minister's confirmed, Angela's sighing already, the UK is in talks about setting up so-called return hubs internationally where asylum seekers will be sent for processing before they are deported. And Number 10 says this will prevent those who have exhausted all legal efforts staying in the UK by using tactics to stall their deportation, such as losing their paperwork or trying to start a family. The government hasn't said which countries they're speaking to. They are reportedly in talks with as many as 9 in Europe and beyond. They include Serbia, Bosnia, North Macedonia. Well, Albania was thought to be one of them because they've got an agreement with Italy. But Starmer was publicly rejected by his Albanian counterpart on a visit to the country yesterday. And we can have a look at this.
Yes, we are in talks with a number of countries about return hubs. And I see them as a really important innovation.
To be very frank with you, we have been asked by several countries if we were open to it, and we said no. We are loyal to the marriage with Italy, and the rest is just love.
I like that Albanian
He's
guy.
brilliant.
Is he like 6'7" or something?
Yeah, he was a Bond villain. He's a Bond villain.
British friendly, but he's like a Tony Blair figure.
But when it all comes apart in a press conference like that, it's just gold, isn't it? And obviously the bad example is Zelensky. Trump was horrendous. But there was a moment where Blair and Assad were together at the podium, and Assad went completely off message and started attacking Britain for its role in Iraq and Afghanistan. And afterwards, apparently, Blair said to him, well, thanks for that. And Assad said, you have your street and I have mine.
Yeah.
It's a great line. So anyway, the Albanian street is not going to include us. And the thing is, I can know why you're sighing, because this is basically another way of spelling Rwanda.
Well, it isn't in this. It is and it isn't, because Rwanda was a centralised programme and people would not be processed here. You got here, you went on the plane, you went. The issue with this particular idea, apart from the fact that Starmer is obviously bricking it, as they say in my part of the world, after getting such a beating at Runcorn. Yeah. And, you know, the classic weather vane, as I often call him, is now swinging towards what voters want.
Well, the local elections, we underreported because they happened at the weekend, but they were shocking.
Also shocking. Although, I agree with you. But particularly a by-election, which I think people take even more seriously, is that the claims will be processed here. They won't be processed offshore. And once somebody comes here, you then get into the whole loophole territory. You know, human rights law is incredibly dense and complex. You know, Starmer himself has a history of being a human rights lawyer. And it will only be when everything is absolutely exhausted will this go, by which time there may be fragile agreements with lots of different countries. We saw what happened with Albania now, and it could be incredibly complex. This is not hostility to immigration. I am the granddaughter of immigrants. We know that it can enrich a society, but it has to be fair and proportionate. Our public services are stretched, housing, education, we all know these things.
You're seeing it as a bit too weak.
So it's basically Starmer saying, oh, you know what, people like the idea of not having people here, but I'm not really with it, so I'm going to do some kind of half-hearted measure.
Okay.
And that, I think, is classic Starmer.
You don't like it even though it's woolly.
I'm despairing again. We're going back here. £700 million was wasted on Rwanda.
They didn't send anyone because
all volunteers went. No, the UK Supreme Court, not the European Court, the UK Supreme Court ruled it unlawful, and then the government changed the law just to designate Rwanda a safe country to get round the UK Supreme Court. But it was always only going to be a few hundred people a year who'd come across on boats. Now, if you're coming across on a boat and there's 30,000 or so, you can work out the odds. Your chances were about 1 in 100 whether you were going to go. It was never going to be a deterrent. And you're right, this is a different system, and it's people who've been ruled you can't have asylum here, and then you'll go to another country before you go home to your own country. Yeah. One, it's not going to work because people are not going to go. They're going to disappear into the economy. But two, why do this when you have to stop the boats coming across, and then two, deal with people promptly in this country and process their cases when they are here. And if they can go somewhere else, you can. Now,
but that
Rishi
won't work either. I mean,
but when
why should we even be processing?
Rishi Sunak's great success on boats, which he said stop the boats, he couldn't. But his great success when he was Prime Minister is he did a deal with Albania, with Eddie Rama, and that was Albanians who came across, would be returned. And 12,000 people went back. That was his great success. He never wanted to boast about it for some weird
So you
reason.
think if someone arrives, in inverted commas, illegally on a boat, there's no processing to be done?
No, we're not even in the realms of processing, because and my big thing is, and people shout me down on this all the time, the whole concept of asylum is that you are fleeing persecution and you want to find a place of safety, not for an economic reason, but because you need to get somewhere where you won't be threatened, okay? They're coming from France, which is a safe country. This is not wartime territory where, this is the first place that I can find somewhere where I'll get sanctuary and salvation. So it's a nonsense. It's for the birds. And I disagree with you robustly, but respectfully, Kevin, is that Rwanda...
Normally means no respect whatsoever.
Although I do love the way he says
I
bought.
don't mind.
I love this debate because he says bought, and that's the best part
that was
of it.
a good moment, yeah.
Yes, it was a good moment. But to be very serious about an incredibly important situation is that once you start processing, this country loves red tape. And once you're here, you become entangled in it. And as Kevin said, they'll disappear.
Actually, the majority of people who come across on small boats are found to have legitimate asylum claims because they're fleeing countries which have civil wars, so they're not economic migrants. But two things. One is Brexit. You could return people to France then. You could return them to other European countries. There was an agreement. It was the Dublin Accord. We came out of the European Union. We're not part of that. And a few hundred people used to be taken back every year to other European countries. The second one is the UN Refugee Convention. Unless we want to start pulling out of United Nations Convention 1951, you can go through other safe countries to the safe country of your destination, which is why you're quite right. They're not under threat from France. They often want to come to Britain. One, because we got an irregular labour market, so it's easier to get a job than in France, where you have stronger employment rules. And the second is there's family ties here. And the people who normally come to Britain is we've been over to their country at some point, often conquered it, bombed it, whatever, and they want to come here.
There is that. I mean, maybe this is all still blowback from the days of empire. We had 200 years where we were the most powerful country in the world. We put our footprints everywhere. We needn't debate now whether that was good, bad or ugly. But the fact is, we have connections.
OK, well, look, if somebody has a family tie and they can produce it, then fine. There was a vouching system like that during the Second World War. But interestingly, people arrived without paperwork, without phones. Look, there are genuine cases of need, and I understand.
And it's all blokes who come, isn't it, Kevin?
That's mainly blokes, but that is traditionally what has happened, that the bloke has gone ahead, established a new home, and then the family follows. Look, people who move around the country for jobs, they might be able to trace their lifeline back to Alfred the Great burning the cakes. If you're going to move from the northeast to the southwest for a new job, it's normally the person with a job. Normally, usually the bloke will go first, and then the family will follow. But we've got to be careful on two things. One is this is you can call it illegal, irregular migration on boats. It's about 40,000 a year. We shouldn't conflate that with net migration, which is legal, which was 700,000.
Yeah, it was something entirely different.
And secondly, got to make the point, people have enriched Britain. People have come here and they come to work, and we've benefited in all sorts of ways. So it's not just
There's
a problem.
There's a big debate about whether they make us richer or not, whether migration makes us richer. But it's true that we are not having enough babies ourselves. We know that. So we're going to have to find replacement.
We know that, and we know that people are not doing the jobs that migrants are then doing.
Yes.
But we have to all those things are definitely true. But we have to have a robust system. And Rwanda said, you're coming here, you're going straight back.
No. It was a gimmick and a stunt.
Well, it caused people to cross the border into Ireland. Ireland started complaining about Rwanda because it caused people to flee to Ireland.
But the very fact it made people do that showed that it was having a deterrent.
I was making that point.
Only a few hundred would go to Rwanda. And if you committed a crime in Rwanda, you'd be sent back here. So all you had to do is go to Rwanda, take a box of matches, set something alight, and you'd have been deported by Rwanda.
OK, that I'd forgotten that quirk in it. Will is in London listening to us. Will, I did have the musical Celeriac before we get on to serious matters. Would you be up for us sending this to you as a special gift?
No, thank you.
I'll have it.
Angela will have it. I can see you're a blunt-speaking man. Will, far away. What would you like to say?
Yeah, that's a hard pass, I think. What was I going to say? I think this idea about, where we're going to send these asylum seekers, it's just, the answer is just so simple, Send them back to the country of origin. Process them here.
What if you don't know? Will, wait a minute. Let's say you get 9 blokes on a boat. They've come from France. Now, I know what you're going to say, but they haven't got any passports because they accidentally dropped them in the water. And the French won't take them back. Yeah, but Will,
do it.
The French won't take them back.
I'll tell you what, mate. I've been on this planet quite a while. I could look at somebody and tell them where they come from.
No, you can't. You can't even tell the difference between Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda. And it's not that easy.
It's either that or put them on an island somewhere and let them get on with it. If they don't own up and tell us where they come from, then I don't know.
The island has been okay. The island has been considered. That's not crazy. They've been talking about. They talked at some point about the Ascension Islands. Yeah. They talked about Pitcairn.
Yeah.
These British territories. Thank you, Will. Sorry about the Celeriac. After the break, we're taking more. You've got it, though. Look, Angela's now got it. More calls. Is it right to send failed asylum seekers abroad? Government's in talks with other countries to do just that. We'd love your calls on it. Sorry, a bit slow getting the phone lines open today. Government should send failed asylum seekers to other countries. Reform. Nigel Farage's party called it a watered-down rehash of the Rwanda policy. The Tories themselves warned that these so-called return hubs, like the ones the Italians have set up in Albania, are a con that will provide no deterrent at all. Love to know what you think about this. 020-7862 2222 is the number. That's kind of a virtual thing, but that is, or is that the actual Italian? That looks real, doesn't it? They've actually done it in Albania. Shows we're all dealing with the same stuff. It almost looks AI, that, but it's a real place, knocked up for people who are being sent back to wherever. Barbara in North Yorkshire, Labour have decided to do this kind of thing. What do you think?
I think it could be a good idea if they could make it work, but I honestly have no confidence in Starmer and the government making this work. I think one of the main things is we need to stop the number of appeals that are going to the courts for these failed asylum seekers to remain in the country. There are too many fat cat barristers making too much money on the back of this. So I would stop that. We need to also have serious discussions with France and tell them that anyone coming across here without documentation will not be accepted, and we will put them back in a boat and take them back across.
Yeah, this is the problem, is because we thought being an island nation meant this stuff wouldn't happen. And we've ended up, we've rediscovered the boat. And the problem with boats is once you take control of a boat and you push it somewhere else, you are sort of responsible for the people on board, like it or not, Barbara. And you can imagine a situation where we say you go back to France and the boat goes down and 10 people die. The government would virtually fall over it.
I'm not saying put them back in their dinghies. I'm saying we put them back in a boat. Instead of the RNLI picking them up or any other boat here, we should have a boat here to put them all in and return them.
The French won't take them. The French will go, we've never seen these guys before, and they haven't got the right papers. And I don't think we could send people back to France if they weren't there legally in the first place.
But Barbara, France has far more asylum seekers than we do here in the UK. Far more. It's if we're exceptional, it's relatively small numbers. Populations are about the same size. And the truth is, they won't take them back, as Jeremy says, because you'd think, hang on, they've all been living in our place, they've gone somewhere else, any more than we would take some people back if they left the UK and went to another country. But I get where you're coming, not having any confidence in it working, because I just don't think it'll work. I just think this idea feels like yet another gimmick like Rwanda, and it's going to cost a fortune if it gets off the ground, and it won't work.
Thank you, Barbara, for your call. And Kevin from a traditionally Labour supporting paper. That's an interesting line on it. So we've just passed 12,000 small boat arrivals. I think this week, 12,000 thus far this year, which is ahead of last year, ahead of all the sort of we're going to smash the gang stuff, which obviously hasn't happened yet, to say the least. And the policy they announced about not letting people stay after 5 years and it's got to be 10 was all aimed this week at legal migrants, which is a bigger number, but it's easier to tackle. And it's still the small boats that get to people. Bill in Gloucestershire, what do you think of this idea of having return hubs in other countries?
Hello, Jeremy. Let me just say very many happy returns to you for tomorrow.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm still 59 3/4.
You're more than welcome. Well, I hope you'll see from this I'm quite a nice guy, but we've spoken before, and my answer to everything on this, I'm afraid, and to the panel as well, is has anybody brought up the fact that these are human beings who need to be treated with dignity and respect? Because if you don't treat people with dignity and respect, you're going back to a time period before the foundation of the UN Charter, and you know what I'm talking about.
I do, Bill, but what about the taxpayer watching who says that they want to be treated with dignity and they don't want their taxes spent on hotels?
Understood. But the fact of the matter is that if we spent more money on international aid, if we went to the root cause of this problem, and nobody again in reform would dare talk about this, because they are such a bunch of somethings, right? If we went to the root cause of this, okay, the root cause is poverty.
We heal the world.
Poverty has created this in sub-Saharan Africa. And sub-Saharan African poverty exists because of what you said earlier about our nation and other nations, empires. And it's coming home to roost. You're absolutely right. So
the idea we can heal the world with we can't even feed. We've got food banks in Britain. We can't sort out Sudan.
Well, hopefully the European Union, and getting back into the EU would be good. Hopefully the European Union as a big body could do this. Hopefully Trump will disappear off the face of the planet in 4 years from now. Hopefully we will start to get back on track with being human beings again.
All right, Bill, stay there. Hang on, let me just bring in Julie in Somerset is listening. So, Julie, what do you make of what Bill is saying?
I disagree. We have to have something that will act as a deterrent. I went to work at 17 and I have paid every tax that's going. Okay, I have a good pension because I paid into it. We have an NHS that is on its knees. Okay, I know because I'm a nurse, I'm a qualified nurse. I want my people who come into a hospital to be treated with dignity and respect as well.
All right.
We can't keep putting people up in hotels and paying the bill. How much is it costing? I want the NHS sorted out, and that will take a large injection of cash.
Well, that's it. Those are the two poles of this argument. And thank you so much, Bill and Julie, for making it so clear. Later, we'll be asking if life begins at 60. I'm almost there. If you are in that zone, any advice welcome. After the break, though, do you think 10-mile-an-hour speed limits are a good idea? 10 miles an hour? A road safety charity is saying you've got to have 10 in cities, around schools, around hospitals and sporting venues. What about it? Why do we need to drive more than 10 miles an hour? 0207 862 2222.